irritable, out of control, sometimes hyperactive, and sometimes quiet and subdued. Those are some of the common moods and behaviors of our students in our classroom. Good afternoon. Today is the very first edition of Eyewitness Documentary of University of the Holy Cross. Come join me as I explore the life of our students with emotional disturbances. We will try to know who they are, what they feel, and how educators like us can help them with disabilities. The Individual with Disability Education Act Special Education Advocate Julie Swenson and Special Education Lawyer Attorney Jennifer Laviano provided a clear definition of emotional disturbance and its characteristics. And this is what they have to say.
There are 13 eligibility categories under the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it's important for parents to remember that an eligibility category is different than a diagnosis. Just because a child has a diagnosed disability does not necessarily mean that that child meets the eligibility criteria under the federal statute. So these are the definitions under the educational model as to whether or not a child is a special education child, a child with a disability, as defined by law.
Here's the definition of emotional disturbance. Emotional disturbance means a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time and to a marked degree that adversely affects a child's educational performance. A, an inability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors. B, an inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers. C, inappropriate types of behavior or feelings under normal circumstances. D, a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression. E, a tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears associated with personal or school problems. Emotional disturbance includes schizophrenia. The term does not apply to children who are socially maladjusted unless it is determined that they have an emotional disturbance. Your state may have other categories or slightly different categories.
Right. So there are the 13 definitions by federal law, and then again, your state can add to those, vary them slightly as long as they don't take away a child's right to receive services if they meet the criteria under the federal law.
The Louisiana Department of Education, on its Bulletin 1508, shared the same definition and characteristics with IDEA, but it's also worth mentioning that emotional disturbance can coexist with other disabilities. Under functional disability, it says that there should be an evidence of severe, disruptive, and/or incapacitating functional limitations of behavior characterized by at least one of the following. Letter A, the inability to exhibit appropriate behavior routinely under normal circumstances. Letter B, a tendency to develop physical symptoms of fear associated with personal or school problems. Letter C, the inability to learn or work that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors. Letter D, the inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers and adults, or a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression. According to the 26th Annual Report by the U.S. Department of Education, about 438,867 students between the ages of 6 to 21 years were identified as having emotional disturbance. This exceptionality represents 6% of the total number of special education statistics. Prevalence studies have suggested that boys outnumber girls in this category. Out of 8 with emotional disorders, 7 of them are boys. These are examples of emotional disturbances. Number 1. Social anxiety disorder. We all experience anxiety from time to time. But for many people, including children, anxiety can be excessive, persistent, seemingly uncontrollable, and overwhelming. An irrational fear of everyday situations may be involved. This high level of anxiety is a definite warning sign that a person may have social anxiety disorder. Number 2. Bipolar disorder, also known as manic depressive illness. It is a serious medical condition that causes dramatic mood swings from overly high or irritable to sad and hopeless, and then back again. For most people with bipolar disorder, these mood swings and related symptoms can be stabilized over time using an approach that combines medication and psychosocial treatment. Number 3. Conduct disorder. Conduct disorder refers to a group of behavioral and emotional problems in youngsters. Children and adolescents with this disorder have difficulty following rules and behaving in a socially acceptable way. It includes aggression, destruction of property, lying or stealing, or other serious violations of rules. It is helpful to provide training for parents on how to handle child or adolescent with this kind of behavior. Family therapy, training in problem-solving skills for children or adolescents, and community-based services that focus on the young person within the context of family and community influences are also helpful. Number 4. Eating disorders. Eating disorders are characterized by extremes in eating behavior, either too much or too little. There are 2 most common types of eating disorders. 1. Anorexia nervosa. It is characterized by starvation and dramatic loss of weight. Bulimia nervosa involves a cycle of binge eating, then self-induced vomiting or purging. The most effective treatment for an eating disorder is some form of psychotherapy or counseling, coupled with careful attention to medical and nutritional needs. Number 5. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, often referred to as OCD, and is actually considered an anxiety disorder. It is characterized by recurrent, unwanted thoughts or obsession and repetitive behaviors or compulsions. Repetitive behaviors such as hand washing, counting, checking, or cleaning are often performed with the hope of preventing obsessive thoughts or making them go away. Treatment for most people with OCD includes a therapist trained in behavior therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, and medication, usually an antidepressant. Number 6. Psychotic disorders. Psychotic disorders is another umbrella term used to refer to severe mental disorders that cause abnormal thinking and perceptions. 2 of the main symptoms are delusions and hallucinations. Schizophrenia is one type of psychotic disorder as well. Most are treated with a combination of medications and psychotherapy or counseling. There are other categories of emotional disturbance, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, major depressive disorder, among others. IDEA requires each state to have an efficient and effective policy ensuring all children with disabilities the right to a free, appropriate public education. For a child whose behavior impedes learning, the team developing the child's individualized education program or IEP needs to consider, if appropriate, strategies to address that behavior, including positive behavioral interventions and supports. We are here at Bell Chase Middle School to interview one of their faculty members specializing in special education. We will try to find out what are the programs they have to help the students with emotional disturbance regarding their academic and emotional needs. Come on. I am so impressed on how their principal, Mr. Joseph Williamson, is hands-on with the students with emotional and behavioral disability. He said that the school has more than 700 students, and their ultimate goal is to establish a safe school environment for their students. I had a great privilege to interview one of their special education teachers doing Tier 2 intervention, Miss Donna D. Riley. She's a teacher of the said school for 25 years. I was so amazed on how she reaches out with her students, not just as a teacher, but as a mother with deepest and sincerest concern to her children and her class home.
School. Glad to meet you, and I'm so happy that you're here today, so that you can see how the classroom is ran.
Right. Well, I only have 2 questions with you about your educational approaches and strategies.
Yes. I would try the triggers. You need to make sure that you find out what the students' triggers are. You get a feel for your students, and you know when they're getting ready to have an explosion. You greet them at the door, first of all. And when you greet them at the door, you know that you can see they're not the same person. So what you need to do is have some type of trigger questions or get their mind off it. And please, whatever you do, don't invade their space. When they're having a bad day, don't put your hands on them. Don't try and, oh, what's the matter? Speak in a calm voice and ask what's wrong. And if they start to blow up, then you can say, okay, let's do this. Let's go and walk. And if you should happen to have an assistant in your class, you tell the assistant, I need to take this child for a walk. You take the child out of the environment that's causing a disturbance. And then once they start walking and they start talking to you, you've de-escalated the problem. I hope that's helping you, The student is not doing what you ask them to do, usually you stand by them. And usually when you stand by them, they know that you're giving them that undivided attention. And then you bring them back. You bring them back. Oh, look at this right here. And there are other kids in the class that are not having an emotional breakdown or anything right at that problem. You bring them back. That's all. I have treats. We have bulldog bucks. When I catch a student doing something good, I have these bulldog bucks right here. And when they are doing what they're supposed to be on task, I don't say anything to them as I'm teaching, and I see that they're doing what they're supposed to do. I just put one on their desk. And this is something that each child in the school look forward to getting because they get treats for this.
Like what's some of the treats?
The treats, they get chips, and the cards go into a big bin, and at the end of the 9 weeks, they get a big prize. A video game, a computer, iPad, cell phones, all those things. And what I do as a classroom teacher, I buy gift cards. And if they have so many, I have chocolates at the bottom and then the big gift card at the top. So they're constantly striving to get that gift card. So you kind of make it a game for them. And there's a point system. If you have so many points, then they can go into a gift box and buy things. The very first thing that I can tell students that are in classes and ready to approach the special needs students, the very first thing you need to do is establish a rapport with your students. You cannot go into the classroom really, really nice and think that every student is going to be really happy to see you. Every child is going to test you. You have to have, on the very first day, your expectations, what you expect the children to do. How do you expect them to behave? You need to make sure that you have your syllabus. You need to make sure that you have your classroom rules. And once you get to know your students, then you can back off. You have to have law and order at first. They're going to think you are they're going to think you're mean, but you're not mean, you're stern. You are trying to set up your classroom so that your students will thrive. They will give you their all. And after that, when you start with the law and order, you can start teaching your students. You have to make sure you model everything for your students. Don't assume that they know everything. Even though you may be in a middle school, you probably will say, oh, they know that already. But never assume. Always remember to start off at the beginning.
I hope that our special feature for today has inspired all of us educators that our students with emotional disturbances are not considered problem of our school and society. Instead, let us all support them by nurturing their emotional and academic needs. Again, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vivian Valdez Lazatin, and this is What I Witness.